Chase, good to see you, man. How's your week going? Talking a lot of Niners this week on the channel. A lot of frustrated Niner fans this week for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Doing awesome, but you always got to love a football Friday during the season. And I've had some coworkers come up to me this week and they're like, Chase, are you doing okay? You started covering this team in 2021. I've watched every single snap since then. This job covering the Niners has changed my life, running the 49ers report. And I'm like, what do you mean, am I doing okay? And they're like, well, in 2021, they made it to an NFC title game. In 2022, they ran it back and they were in the Final Four once again. And then last year, they were in the Super Bowl. But now they're a losing team. They're not going to make the playoffs. Are you doing okay? And I said, I'm doing great. You know why? I cannot wait for this 49ers offseason and to cover it every step of the way, because this is going to go down as one of the more pivotal, most important Niners offseasons in franchise history, if not in recent time. And I imagine we're going to talk about some of that here coming up today.
Well, there's no question. John Lynch stopped by this morning on KMBR and talked about a number of different things. And, one of the things that he said, kind of probably the most substantive thing that he said, was that he thinks Dre Greenlaw, he was asked about Dre Greenlaw, and we'll share the screen here and we'll let you hear what John said. But this is John Lynch on KMBR. Oops, wrong button. And I will share the screen and you guys can catch this for yourselves. On KMBR, John Lynch this morning talking about Dre Greenlaw with Brian Murphy on the KMBR morning show. And here it is. We'll rewind it so you can get the full answer. Here we go.
What point do you corner him in the parking lot to sign a new deal?
Yeah, break some news, John. Go ahead.
We love Dre, and we're interested in keeping him here. For a long time. He's a special player. So we'll let that take care of itself as time progresses here.
So what do you think? I mean, should they play him the rest of the way, or should they sit him and sign him? Because I know he loves to play, Chase, and he loves to play so much that I think I would let him play this game, but I think this would be his last game of the year. I would sit him the final two. He's got nothing to prove. You don't want this guy in the open market. You want him signed. He's a big culture player. I know the money's tight, but you got to find room to pay this guy for sure, in my estimation. How should the Niners play their hand with Dre Greenlaw?
Well, I don't think they've managed injuries that well all year. They mismanaged Christian McCaffrey a little bit, and last year he had his workload mismanaged. And I think that's a big reason why he had to deal with the bilateral Achilles tendonitis, and that's coming after he led the NFL in touches, and then he comes back. They use him like the feature back that he was last year when he was one of the best skill position players in the NFL, if not the best, and then he injures his knee. They mismanaged Trent Williams a little bit. He gets injured against the Buccaneers. He comes back, gets that pain injection against the Seahawks. We haven't seen him since. Have they mismanaged Brock Purdy a little bit? Because last week the deep ball was a little bit lackluster. And then with Dre Greenlaw, he plays that first half, and the plan for him was to play half of the snaps throughout the game. He was out there for pretty much every single snap of that first half against Los Angeles, and he ended up playing 30 snaps during the first two quarters, and then he couldn't play in that second half because he was dealing with some leg fatigue. So I would be very careful. The Niners have to learn from the mistakes that they've made this year, and they have to understand this year has been a season from hell. They have not been able to dodge these injuries. When the season is over, I imagine they're going to be the most injured team in the NFL, if not right up there with the Detroit Lions. And I think that's pretty telling from John Lynch, because he said some things similar in previous off seasons or in previous seasons where he kind of goes about it the same way. We really like Dre Greenlaw. We want him to be a part of our organization moving forward, but the players who he was talking about, Brandon Ayuk, Nick Bosa, and others, they weren't coming off a torn Achilles at the age of 27, 28 years old. And Dre Greenlaw is, and he only played one half last week and then could not play in that second half because he was starting to feel a little bit of instability with his lower half. So I know what Greenlaw said this week when he was asked by you and the media contingent. about a contract and him coming back to the Niners. All I'm worried about is balling out with my bros against the Dolphins and kicking ass. That's part of the reason why fans love Greenlaw, why the Niners love him too, but they have to exercise caution, especially if they want him to be a part of this organization moving forward, because he's so critical and so important to this Niners defense. And it's so telling when Diamador Lenore and Nick Bosa and George Kittle and Fred Warner speak the way that they do about him. Charvarius Ward called him the engine of the 49ers defense. Nick Bosa said he's one of my favorite teammates I've ever had. George Kittle says he's a unicorn of a football player. And so those words speak volumes, and then his play, I thought, against the Rams spoke volumes. And I agree, like, maybe you play him against Miami, but if you really want to get a long-term deal with him done and you want him to be full strength for next year, you're not really playing for anything right now. You don't want him to increase his value, so sit him, let him rest up, let him heal up full for 2025.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. I really do. Lynch also was asked about his confrontation on the sidelines with Devondre Campbell. And this is what he had to say about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot was made of it in terms of being a confrontation. I'm not sure it was a confrontation. It was a quick conversation. I think we had a little signal going in that his energy wasn't right. Kyle had a conversation with him, and we thought everything was going to be all right. It wasn't. And you could see that right away during the game. At some point, it became clear to me he was refusing to go in the game, and we had a couple linebackers down. And so, and then, as you're watching it, they come out of half and whatnot. I think, it was becoming a distraction in what was, essentially a playoff game for us. And at that point, Kyle's coaching the team. I usually don't go down until late in a game, but I could see that it was really becoming a distraction as one by one players, coaches were trying to get him to go. And I finally just said he needs to, I need to go see what's going on. And if what's going on is what I think's going on, he needs to get off the field. And so that's simply what it was. And that's how it ended up. And it's unfortunate. It's nothing that anyone wanted, but you can't stand for that. Just as we're talking about finishing and having each other's back, when you have something contrary to that, that's not who we are. It's not who we'll ever be.
What possible explanation could he have?
I don't know. I don't know, and I don't think I'll ever find out. So we'll leave it at that. But he's no longer here, and we'll move forward.
And then just last.
Yeah. So, what did you think? I mean, there were some players that made it sound like, Lynch had a pretty wicked temper in telling Campbell to get off the field. John downplayed it there. There was an awful lot of discussion this week. I don't think there are some people that have said, this is a gigantic backfire for what really ails the 49ers. No, it's not, because nobody who lit by who? Devondre Campbell, or what, are we supposed to ignore that he went AWOL on his teammates? Or it is a big story. It is in some ways it's a bigger story than the 49ers lost, because it's rare. It's more rare. You lose games all the time. You lose crushing games all the time. Guys don't walk off the field and betray their brothers when they're healthy just because they're pissed and their feelings are hurt. That's rare. I think that's why a lot of people talked about it in the post game. But go ahead, Chase. What kinds of things have you said this week about Campbell and the way the Niners handled things?
Well, I thought it was funny when John Lynch is just speaking right there on KNBR. I thought for a moment he forgot that he was on the radio and he was about to say he's got to get the F off the field. And then he realized, oh, I'm live on the radio here. Right. I don't think I can go about it in that manner. And I might have to get the dump button used on me, to use a radio term. But look, this is notable because, look, when Antonio Brown took his jersey off at MetLife Stadium when they were playing the New York Jets and he just walked off the field, that was a huge storyline. Deontay Johnson did this a few weeks ago for the Baltimore Ravens, where he refused to go into the game to play the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Ravens didn't approach it in that manner. it didn't take until a couple of weeks later when they started to feel the heat that they finally let him go. Devondre Campbell does this, and the Niners' action was very swift. And I think it was very swift because they want to send a message to the entire locker room or to players who might come to that organization. This will not be accepted. And one of the things that the Niners are built on, one of the pillars of their organization, and something that I noticed that was so obvious to me when I was in Las Vegas around this team for the entire week of the Super Bowl, culture does matter. Character does matter. They bring players in who are high character people who love football. And I asked all of the team captains about this when I was at the Super Bowl. How does culture result in sustainable winning? Where does this come from? And I thought I got some really great answers on that front. And guys like George Kittle and Nick Bosa are talking about how Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have fostered this type of culture that has resulted in a lot of winning. And here's what's key. They will let us be us, but there are some rules when you put on that Niners uniform or when you are getting checks from this organization. They will give you the leeway to be yourself, and that's great because we can exude who we are and we can let people know what our personalities are. But a couple of key things. You have to love ball. You have to be dedicated. You have to be on time. You can't mess around. Football is the ultimate team game. And Devondre Campbell literally violated all of that. And so I give credit to John Lynch for going to the sideline and saying, you got to get out of here. I give credit to the Niners for not letting this linger. They cut him ASAP. He wasn't seen in the building. His locker was cleared out as soon as possible, and it was taken over by some practice squad players. And then lastly, before I throw it back to you, Devondre Campbell's a stiff. He's a fraud. It's the ultimate definition of that. And this is why. He was brought in to be the Dre Greenlaw holdover plan. He knew that upon signing the contract. And so when Greenlaw came back, whenever that was going to happen, and it happened last Thursday, Devondre Campbell knew when he put pen to paper that Greenlaw was going to start. He's one of the best linebackers in the game. Last year, he was a borderline all-pro. You heard what his teammates said about him, that he is the engine and the enforcer of this defense. And when Greenlaw comes back, you're going to pout and you're going to complain prior to the game and then refuse to go in the game. And this is a Niners team that's had to deal with a lot this year. Charvarius Ward tragically lost his 1-year-old daughter. Trent Williams lost twin boys. Ricky Pearsall got shot in the chest and nearly died. Ricky Pearsall is back playing. Charvarius Ward, Trent Williams, they are back playing. Obviously, Williams is out now, but you also factor in Fred Warner, who's been playing on a broken ankle since week 4. And so this was a selfish act, and I'm glad that Campbell is no longer with this team. And I don't think that he's going to get another job in the NFL because teams just won't stand for this.
You know, they should have listened to me a month ago because I said it on at least 3 or 4 different streams. I'm like, I've been in enough NFL locker rooms. I've been around enough football players. I've seen enough football players' personalities to know when I'm seeing a guy who's going to throw a mutiny as soon as he's met with, you're not starting. I mean, I interviewed him earlier this year. You could tell. I mean, he was pissed off at Green Bay. That they turned on him, but they turned on him because Campbell regressed. And it's like, you know, these players, sometimes the hardest thing they ever do is evaluate themselves. They can't be objective. It's, you know, some of these guys are very emotional, but I could just tell this is the personality type. And I said it on a live stream, a couple live streams. I'm like, when they stop starting this guy, they're literally going to have to drive him off the campus. They're going to have to literally eject him from the building and from the facility because he's not going to handle it well. I guarantee you. And sure enough, you know, it's exactly the way it played out. And Bosa told us this week there were indications in the pregame he was barking up a storm in the locker room about his discontent. And my only thing is, hey, you know what? Somebody should have seen that. If I could see this guy wasn't in the right frame of mind, then I refuse to believe that they didn't see it. They saw it. They just didn't give a shit. And we're like, you know, we'll just let this, you know, linger. They should have just moved off of him 3-4 weeks ago for a younger, better player. They never would have gone with him probably if this long if Curtis Robinson had stayed healthy, but he tore the ACL, and they were down this road. But this is the biggest regression of the football team from Azeez, Dre, and Warner 2 years ago to Campbell, Flanagan, Fowles, and a banged up Warner now. It's one of the biggest regressions of the team.